Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of Wellness and Health Women's Voices. And I think this third session, is the one which is probably closest to my heart, is the furthest away from academic endocrinology, but I think closest to all women's heart across the world. And we're privileged today to have people from Brazil, from the UK, from Botswana and South Africa. And I think it's going to be a fun session. A lot of the chairs had a lot of questions about how the sessions are going to be run. And basically the theme or the mantra for today is to just have fun. So welcome everyone. Of course, I would like to briefly say hello to our conveners, which is Dr. Sarita Bajaj and Dr. Gagan Priya. We'll come to so Dr. Sarita Bajaj unfortunately could not be with us today because she's not well. But ma'am is the consultant endocrinologist, director, professor, and head of medicine at MLN Medical College, Prayagraj. And she's always been there to mentor us, to support us, and to always kind of encourage us. Dr. Gagan Priya, I think, needs no introduction, at least to Indian endocrinologists. But she's a consultant endocrinologist at Fortis and Ivy Hospitals in Mohali. And she is a force to be reckoned with. Today, we have two main sessions. The first session is about communication in the diabetes clinic and what are the skills that we must have to communicate in the diabetes clinic. That is going to be our first session. And then the second session will be about work-life balance. This is a topic which has been selected by the women endocrinologists themselves, and they all were very keen to talk about this. And walking the tightrope of work and life, that is going to be the second session. I'll quickly introduce the chairpersons for the first session, and then we'll dive right in. We're very privileged to have Dr. Aderonke Oyevo from Botswana, South Africa. She's the head of the Diabetes Center at Princess Marina Hospital in Gaborone. Thank you very much for accepting. She was very wary because in India, we used to using WhatsApp all the time, and I kept sending her messages on WhatsApp, and she was a little taken aback that who's this woman from India who keeps texting me. But I think we need to get more, we need to use mail more. Thank you, Dr. Uzma Khan, for being here today. She was very kind to accept our invitation at very short notice. And she's also, she works at the Warwickshire Institute for the Study of Diabetes, Endocrinology and Metabolism, University Hospitals Coventry and Warwickshire in the NHS Trust, UK. I will hand over the session to both of the chairpersons, and let's start today. The topic is communication skills in the diabetes clinic.
Hello and good afternoon. I think my task is to introduce the panelists. But let me first of all say thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Dr. Tijal, for your patience with me. As you said, I was a bit wary, but I'm now happy to be here, looking forward to having some fun. And I'm also chairing this session with Dr. Uzma. So if we can move on so that I can introduce the panelists. All right, so I am very privileged to introduce Dr. Chitra Selvan, an associate professor in endocrinology, probably more known to you than myself, in Bangalore. And then there's also Dr. Tijan Lathia, consultant endocrinologist, Apollo and Fortis Hospitals in Mumbai. Then we have Dr. Gayatri Ganika, consulting endocrinologist and diabetologist, thyroid specialist, also from Mumbai. So our topic today is communication skills in the diabetes clinic. And I'm sure, as we know, communication skills, or having communication skills, good communication skills, is essential when it comes to meeting, when it comes to speaking with our patients and of course their relatives in our diabetes clinics. So I think I will allow our panelists to take it on from here, and then at the end we'll have a few words, myself and Dr. Uzma. Thank you.
We can add something here. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be part of this interesting session today. And as we know, effective communication is vital in managing diabetes, which relies heavily on self-management skills of people living with diabetes. And we should be mindful of the language we use. And I think we have session on language matters. And one of Rudyard Kipling's most famous quote is quite relevant here, which is words are, of course, the most powerful drug used by mankind. And with this, I'll hand the session back. Thank you.
Dr. Gayatri? No, you're not yet.
Am I audible?
Yeah, please go ahead, Gayatri.
Yes. So good evening, everyone. Thank you to the chairpersons for the generous words of introduction. And I welcome you all to the first session of this interesting webinar, where we are going to talk about a very, very important skill, which is equally important as well as in life, and it is about communication skills. So this session has been designed based on the learnings from this important study and document called Language Matters, which was created by Dr. Tejal Lathia from Mumbai and Dr. Chitra Selvan from Bangalore. And I'm sure they'll be briefing about their insights in a while. So we have created a very unique and interesting format. We have created 4 common clinical situations and patients who come to, garden variety patients who come to our OPDs day to day, and how we can, how the communication in a traditional style and a positive way, in a non-judgmental style, can impact their diabetes management. So there are going to be 4 patients that I'm going to enact. And without much ado, I think we can go straight to the first session. Yeah. So here I'm going to play the role of a 30-year-old female. So her father has had diabetes for last 15 years, and he's landed up into stroke recently, and he's on wheelchair. He's not able to walk. She's come to see the father's diabetes doctor to regularize his blood sugar levels. She's herself stressed and she's worried. She's obese, so she wants to know what is the risk and what is the future ahead. So now she's just waiting at the doctor's clinic and she's going ahead. So, hello, doctor. Can I come in?
Yes, please come in. Good evening.
Good evening, doctor. Do you remember my father has been your patient for long?
Okay. And so why have you come to see me today, Gayatri?
So basically, ma'am, my father recently had a stroke and he's wheelchair bound now. I have got him to see you, but it's really,
He had a stroke?
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
I remember your father very well. I have been telling him for the longest time to get his blood sugars controlled, but he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't come for follow-up regularly. And now look what has happened. What about you? Have you checked your HbA1c? You know that even you have a high risk of diabetes, right?
Yes, ma'am, I know. I have recently checked.
And what is your HbA1c?
Yeah, it's 6.4%, ma'am.
6.4%? That means
Yes.
you've already landed into diabetes. It's just a question of few months more. You're going to end up getting diabetes. You're going to have to start medications. And then look what has happened to your father. You're probably going to end up like that. Please take care of yourself. Please do something about it. Lose weight. I'm warning you. And afterwards, if you do end up getting diabetes, please don't come and cry to me. I'm warning you, you're going to get diabetes.
Oh my God. Okay. So this doctor who is very senior, who has busy OPD, she means well for the patient, but the way she has communicated has baffled the patient's relative or the current patient. So this girl is now in a bad mental state and she does not want to see this doctor. So I'm really scared, doctor, now, because I mean, you have said that I'm going to get diabetes definitely. So I really cannot go on this way. And I need to find another doctor who can probably explain the importance of my HbA1c and weight reduction and everything. So now I have found Dr. CS and I'm going to her for my consultation. Hello, doctor. Can I come in?
Hi, Gayatri. You look very flustered. How are you doing?
I'm not very well, ma'am. My father just landed up in a stroke. He has been diabetic for many years, and I have been handed over a judgment that I'm soon going to land up in diabetes. So I'm really scared myself.
Okay, so I hope you have enough help at home to help you out. It must have been a very difficult month
Yes.
managing a patient in the hospital, especially during these COVID times. I hope everybody's safe. I hope
Yes,
you found
ma'am.
enough people to help you with the care. And it's good that you've taken charge and you've found some time to come and see me today about your prospects of health. So I appreciate the charge that you're taking, right? So yes, if you have a parent who has diabetes, it does increase your risk of diabetes, but we are starting much earlier here, right? We are starting much earlier. That gives us a whole lot of time to make small changes, which over a long time will compound to give you huge benefits. And there is now lots of evidence to suggest that we can even prevent diabetes, right? This era is completely different from the era in which your father lived. We have numerous advances in medications, science, prevention of cardiovascular disease and stroke, all of which we will implement consistently and make sure that you don't get most of the complications that your father is going through, right? So I do not want you to get flustered and add another stressor on the many things that you have juggling right now, right? So all we
Yes.
need to do is small changes. Let's review what your normal day looks like and take it from there. But please remember that this is something that you must pay attention to, right? Tend to it frequently, get it checked every 3 to 6 months, and we should do very well and keep it away, right? So let's start with your day and see how it goes.
Okay. Thank you so much, doctor. So now looking at this doctor style, she has stated the same facts in a non-judgmental way, in a much positive way, in a way that has boosted up the patient's confidence to deal with the possible risk of diabetes. So it's not handing over a judgment to the patient. So definitely I'm feeling much better, hopeful about the future. So this is the difference between the doctor's approach is very clearly evident here, and probably most of us have followed the first conventional approach. But instead of that, if we can choose the right words, we can really boost up the patient's confidence, and we can, in a positive way, tell the family member about the future risk of diabetes. So moving on from here, we will go to the second case scenario here. It's a 40-year-old female who has had diabetes for last 5 years. She had well-controlled diabetes and her HbA1c used to be 7.5 before the lockdown. But suddenly, since last 15-20 days, she's had osmotic symptoms, she has had fungal infections, and she checked her sugars. Now the HbA1c has gone up to 9.5%. She's really worried and stressed, and she's gone to see her regular diabetes doctor. So now I am that patient. I'm okay. So yeah. So I am now 40-year-old patient with diabetes. So I am going to Dr. CS now. Hello, doctor.
Hi, Gayatri. At last you found the time to come and see me, huh? After so many months. Come, sit down.
Busy.
Come, sit down. You're always too busy for me, Gayatri. Come on, show me that report. Let me see how it is.
Yes, ma'am. It's really...
What does it read? What does it read? You read and tell me.
Ma'am, it's 9.5% this
what?
time.
What, Gayatri? Looks like you've thoroughly enjoyed yourself during the pandemic, right?
No, ma'am.
Lots of swigging, lots of sweets, I'm sure. I'm sure you've had like lots of baking also, is it? Huh? Baking with your kids?
Not really, ma'am. I've been very stressed and busy.
How are you stressed? Now that you're working from home, you saved on the travel time, right? You could have utilized that time to get some exercise, na? Catching up on sleep, is it? Show me all your tablets.
Oh, ma'am.
Show me all the tablets. How many tablets have you missed? You've forgotten taking your tablets in all of this fun time. Show me all the tablets. Hisab nikalo. Count it for me. Count it for me. My God. If Dr. Tejal sees this HbA1c report and she finds out that I am your treating doctor, na, oh my God, the next meeting I see her, I'm going to be like, I won't know where I have to keep my face. Please go find another doctor. I can't continue treating you, Gayatri, like this. If you behave like this, my God, so many excuses for this HbA1c. What can I do now? I can only increase your dose. Please, I can't guarantee anything. Please just find another doctor. I'm not going to be the one. You're going to bring up the mean HbA1c of all my patients and practice is going to look so bad for me. My God, Gayatri. Some guts with this HbA1c.
I'm really sorry, ma'am.
What sorry?
Okay. So this is how she has experienced the first consultation, and obviously this has baffled her. This has left her disheartened, and I'm extremely worried, and I'm really, disheartened to know that my regular doctor has reacted this way, as if it is all my guilt and it is all my failure that my HbA1c has gone up. But I have really been stressed. My mother has had COVID, and there are so many other things in life which are going on. And if this doctor has disowned me after so many years of regular consulting, I really need to find another doctor who can help me solve my problem in a better way. So now I have found Dr. TL, and I'm going to her for consultation. Hello, good evening, Dr. TL.
Good evening, Gayatri. Tell me, how can I help you today?
Ma'am, recently my HbA1c has worsened. It is now 9.5%. I'm really worried. Earlier, it used to be, in 7.5% range.
Okay, so Gayatri, do you want to tell me? I mean, I'm sure you thought about this, that why the HbA1c has gone up. So do you have any, have you thought about this, why it's gone up?
Ma'am, probably because I've missed some tablets. I haven't been regular. My mom had COVID and she was really in a bad state. She was in ICU for a couple of weeks and we were running all around the place. So I missed my medications that time. I haven't been able to exercise because I have work from home and there are no maids to help. So all the responsibility comes on my shoulder and I really could not find time for self-care.
So, but now that the lockdown has opened up, are you exercising now? Do you have time to exercise now? Have you started again?
Ma'am, I have recently started finding out, some time in my schedule for exercise.
Right. So you make sure that you're going to continue that. And in the home, do you live in a nuclear family or an extended family? How is the situation?
Ma'am, it's an extended family. So I have my in-laws, there are kids, there are relatives whom I have to, take care of. And there are a lot of chores that I have to do.
Okay. But you are doing some of the household chores, so that should, count as a little bit of exercise. And
Yes,
do you working from home now? What is your schedule like? Is it very busy?
Yes, ma'am, I'm working from home and the schedule is busy and it's drastic and fanatic, and many times the meetings get extended till midnight. But the situation out there is so bad. It is so competitive and fierce that, if I say that I will not be able to attend the meetings, they might just ask me to leave. It's really bad.
So there's an added stress. So there's the added stress of maybe losing your job if you don't. But I just had some quick suggestions, Gayatri. If you're going to be in meetings all day long, if you could just join in from your phone for some of the meetings and you could walk while you're talking on the meetings, make sure that you drink water adequately. You could put your video off for part of the meeting and maybe eat on time. So those are the small things that you can do. And I understand that your mom had COVID and you weren't able to take your medications regularly. Are you taking them regularly now?
Yes, ma'am. I have now started taking them very regularly, particularly.
Okay, so what I want to tell you, Gayatri, is diabetes is a lifelong condition. We both understand that. And there will be times when, things will go off track. But just because it's gone off track once doesn't mean that you can't come back on track. You've already started most of the work. You've started exercising. You're taking your medications properly. You are pretty active already in the house. So all I'm going to do is optimize your medications for the next couple of months. And I'm sure that your HbA1c will be back to what it was before. And I don't think there's much cause for worry.
Thank you so much, doctor. That feels so much more nice and positive. So here we saw that this second doctor has actually addressed the patient's concern in an objective way. She has provided practical solutions which can be applied to the patient's daily life. First of all, she heard the patient well. The previous doctor did not even give time for the patient to explain herself that what was really wrong with her life. And because this is life, and as Dr. Tejal has said, it's a lifelong disorder. Many times there will be situations which are tough and which may not allow the adequate self-care time. But here, providing objective solutions and not judgmentalizing the patient, not putting blame onto the patient's head is very important. So we saw how effective the second type of communication style was. So I'm really now feeling good, and I'm happy that I will be able to manage and bring down my sugars. Okay, so without much ado, let's go to the third situation. I'm now here.
Okay. Dr. Gayatri is changing her attire to match the patient who's walking in. Loving the enthusiasm, Dr. Gayatri.
Yeah, fine. Okay, that's okay. Now I'm playing role of a 50-year-old patient who is highly successful, who is career oriented, who owns an ad agency. She's an executive. She's very busy. And now she is at such juncture at her career. She is at a great place. So she wants to, go all out for it. But somewhere now her diabetes is coming in the way. Also, she's perimenopausal. She is experiencing some chest pain, which has recently been evaluated, and she's been asked to undergo a TMT, and she's positive, and she's really worried about what the angio reports would be. And added to that, her blood sugars are currently uncontrolled, and she first of all needs fitness from her doctor, diabetes doctor, to undergo this procedure. So there is added dual stress, whether what the angiography is going to reveal and how to control the blood sugars in an effective way. So now she's going to her regular doctor, Dr. TL. Yes. So, hello, doctor. How are you?
I'm fine, Gayatri. Tell me, how are you? How have you come to see me today?
Ma'am, recently I had some chest pain and my cardiologist asked me to undergo a stress test, and I'm really scared it has come positive, ma'am. Now what to do, you tell me. My sugars are all over the place.
And what is your HbA1c, Gayatri?
Ma'am, I'm afraid it is 10% this time.
This time, just let me look at your old reports. I'm going through your old reports and I can see the health checkups for the past 3 years. And your HbA1c has been hovering between 8 to 9% for the past 3 years. I'm also realizing you haven't come for a follow-up for the longest time. And now that your TMT is positive, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing like this? You want to get a heart attack? You know what?
Ma'am,
No, I don't want to listen to anything. Do you know that if your sugars are high, your kidney will get spoiled? You will need dialysis. Have you found a kidney donor in KEP that when your kidney gets spoiled, then what you're going to put there? You know, I have a patient, this couple who comes to me, the wife is completely blind. She has to literally hold on to her husband's hand and he has to bring her into the clinic. You people are so careless. This career and all is all okay, but if your health is bad, then what are you going to do? What use is that career going to be? You better pull up your socks. You know what the latest data says? The latest data says that if you have diabetes as well as a heart disease, your life will be 12 years less. So you're going to live a much shorter life if you're going to play around with your diabetes. I'm warning you, you better get serious, otherwise things are going to be really bad.
Okay, so now this patient is devastated. She is someone for whom her work is extremely important, and this doctor has put all the blame onto the work. And now she's saying that, what use is your career? So this patient is feeling really bad. She's feeling ashamed and she's feeling guilty. So I really can't go on like this with this doctor who is saying that my life has already been cut short. What use is following the restrictions for diabetes? Why should I follow lifestyle modifications for a tough disease if my life is not going to be what I want it to be? I have worked hard all throughout my life to, come to a place, but it's not happening. Okay, so now I must find a different doctor, and I found Dr. CS and I'm going to see her now.
Hi, Gayatri. So I hope you're feeling okay. Don't worry, treadmill test can be positive. An angiogram will be done. We'll bring your sugars down and we'll talk about it. But I have read the notes made by the previous doctor.
Yeah.
So have you paused to maybe kind of understand the relationship between the diabetes and heart disease? Do you think they're connected?
Definitely, I think that they are connected, but I cannot figure what went wrong.
Yeah, so yes, the heart, chest pain and the heart disease are very closely connected to diabetes. And it's also generally believed that women are protected from heart disease, but diabetes seems to take away some of that protection, right? So it is important for us to make sure from now on, at least, that we keep the sugars very well controlled along with your blood pressure and cholesterol so that these complications do not happen. There's also some amount of protein leak in your urine, right?
Yes, ma'am, microalbumin.
I understand. So if we start tight control now, there's a 30 to 40% chance that the albuminuria might even vanish, and then we might keep your creatinine under control, right? Even that is something that you should know. You are doing so well in your life and career, right? I'm sure over the years, you have learned so many tricks and tips, how to manage people, how to manage multiple projects and all of it. So I would just suggest that you take some of those managerial skills and apply it here, right? So that you can fit in this and also make a place for this, right? As we're touching 50, there are going to be some other changes in your body. So your blood pressure could act up, your sleep can get disturbed, because of which your sugars could go up, right? And menopause does take away some of the protection that, you know, heart disease is offered to by estrogen. So I think it's time to kind of reassess priorities. Take some time for your own self and self-care. You'll come back stronger. You'll be able to do whatever you want to do. We're not asking you to pause everything, but just come back a little stronger, so that you're there to do extremely well in the career that you've built so much. So all is not lost at this moment. We can definitely manage. We can definitely make sure that we bring everything under control, but we just need a little bit more, let's say, organization, planning, and making some time for this whole thing. Okay, so let's move forward and see how we can bring the sugars down, so you can go right ahead and get that angiogram. It's very urgent, right? So let's get that done.
Yes. Okay. So after this doctor's consultation, the patient is really feeling empowered to manage her diabetes and, you know, take out some time and prioritize her health over her career. She is not told to dump the career totally, as stated by the earlier doctor. So she has understood the patient's situation and has imparted the important information about complications of diabetes. How can we prevent them in a better way? So the executive is now feeling much better. Okay, so now I go and become the fourth patient for today, and she's a, so it's a young patient. It's a young patient who's 30 years old, and she's a teacher, and she has had diabetes for last 2 years. She's recently got married 6 months back, and she could not see her diabetes doctor because she's moved away. And now she has missed a period in this cycle, and she's found that her urine pregnancy test is positive, and she's extremely excited that she's pregnant. Now she has done other tests also, including the sugar test, and HbA1c is 8, and she's come to see a regular diabetes doctor, who is Dr. CS. So now I'm seeing Dr. CS. Hi, doctor. How are you doing?
Oh, Gayatri, looking very happy and all. What is happening?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. See, what surprise.
What surprise do you have? Sorry?
I got married 6 months back.
Oh my God. And you did not even bother to come in for a check. Oh my God. And you're pregnant. You're pregnant now.
Yes, ma'am. Recently.
How did you get pregnant? How did you get pregnant? By accident means what?
Sorry,
okay,
ma'am.
What is your HbA1c? What is your HbA1c? Forget about it. Tell me your HbA1c. What medications are you on? My God, how could you go and get pregnant? What is your HbA1c?
Ma'am, it's 8.5%.
Oh my.
And I'm on metformin and sitagliptin.
Oh my God. That HbA1c of 8.5%, I do not know what is going on right now. How many weeks are you?
Must be 8 weeks.
The baby's heart, brain, everything is being formed now. Everything is being formed now. With that high sugars, I don't know whether there's going to be a hole in the heart or whether the brain is not going to be formed. I do not know the effects, and forget about the medications you're on. Nobody has studied the effect of that medication that you're on the unborn child, right? If tomorrow something happens and if your gynecologist finds something on the scan, I am not the one to be blamed. How can you just randomly go get married and get pregnant and then come back to see me? Huh? Have we not spoken about how we should be like prepared before we go in for pregnancy? So I don't know what you're going to do. We definitely have to put you on insulin. This medication has to stop. You have to check sugars 4 times a day. You have to go on insulin 4 times a day. I don't know how you're going to manage your work and the sugars. What will happen to the baby? We don't know. You can go talk to your gynecologist. My God, what is your gynecologist going to say about this endocrinologist? She's going to say, I know nothing about pre-pregnancy counseling. Thanks to you, she's going to think, I know nothing about pre-pregnancy counseling. My God, Gayatri.
Sorry, ma'am. Okay. So now this patient has really got, the shock of her life. She was so happy. She was excited about pregnancy, but now she's all filled with guilt and shame. Shame about being pregnant and guilt about harming the unborn child. So now definitely she's decided that this endocrinologist has put her off enough and she cannot really continue because pregnancy is a long affair. And so she decides to find another doctor who can help her probably. So she's found Dr. TL and now she's consulting Dr. TL. So hello, doctor.
Hi, Gayatri. Tell me, how can I help you today?
Ma'am, I'm 30 years old. I had diabetes for last 2 years. I am taking metformin and DPP-4 sitagliptin, but I got married recently 6 months back, and I've just got pregnant also.
Oh, so congratulations, especially in a country like India, the minute you get married and everybody asks you the same question, is there any good news? So finally, you must be thrilled that you're pregnant now, right? Okay,
Is
but
it a good news, ma'am? I'm really worried about my child.
yeah, so
The child.
okay. So what is your HbA1c? You said you were taking metformin and sitagliptin. What is your HbA1c like, Gayatri, currently?
8%, ma'am.
Okay, so the two most important things, one is that sitagliptin we can't use in pregnancy. You're going to have to stop it immediately. We'll continue with the metformin. The HbA1c is a little high, but we'll work together. We'll figure it out. We'll work on your diet. We'll work on your exercise, and we'll see how to manage the blood sugars. It should be fine. We should be able to get the blood sugars down.
Ma'am, I'm worried about my child, whether I have already damaged and created some deformities, and whether my child in future is going to get diabetes, whether he will be diabetic at birth.
So definitely, if the blood sugar is on the higher side prior to the pregnancy and during getting pregnant, there could be problems with the baby, but we'll deal with that at a later date. We do not advise termination of pregnancy because the blood sugars are high. So we'll get your blood sugars down. We'll closely monitor you. We'll look at the scans at 18 weeks. We'll get a better idea of what the baby is doing and how it's looking, and then we can take it from there. So right now, all you need to focus on is getting the blood sugars down. The baby is not going to get diabetes at the time of birth. Yes, there may be an increased risk of diabetes for the baby in future. But my advice to you, Gayatri, or my suggestion would be, let's focus on the current pregnancy, getting everything in place right now. We'll manage the sugars, have a healthy baby, and then we can come to that part later. The only thing I wanted to also tell you about is we probably will need insulin to take care of the blood sugars during the pregnancy. Because, yeah, so don't get scared. I'm not telling you that I'll start insulin because I want to punish you or because you've done something wrong. The reason I'm suggesting insulin is because, one, 50% of pregnancies, we are not able to control the blood sugars on metformin alone. The other thing is insulin is the safest option for your baby. And that is why I know that every mother wants just that. You and I both want the same thing, that we have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy delivery. And if you need to use insulin for that, then I think we should go ahead with that. It's not to scare you, but it's what's good for your baby.
And will my insulin be permanent?
So I think that, and you are motivated. So if we continue to follow the lifestyle modifications and you continue them after the delivery, you're able to take off all the pregnancy weight, and we'll work together for that. Then I'm sure that we should be able to go back to tablets once your baby stops breastfeeding. So maybe not immediately after delivery, but within 6 to 8 months, once the baby is weaned off, then yes, we should be able to go back to tablets, not to worry.
Okay, works. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I'm feeling that I should, in the best interest of my child, I will definitely take insulin if required, and I don't mind getting my sugars checked many times. And as advised by you, I will follow all diet advice. And the pain of insulin pricking is much better. Compared to having guilt about high sugars.
Yeah, and we're in this together. So I'm there for you. We'll manage it together. We'll monitor together. We'll fix the doses. We'll manage it. So you're not alone. We're there together. We'll deal with it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So in this very tricky situation of diabetes and pregnancy, we have seen how to deal with diabetes and pregnancy without making patients feel guilty, in a positive note, and empowering them to manage and take some of the toughest things like insulin and frequent self monitoring of blood glucose. So these 4 situations we all of us have come across very commonly, and we have seen how probably all of us have been there and have been on the other side and spoken to our patients like in the conventional communication style, which is like parental style and gives superiority to the doctors. So I will hand over the proceedings to Dr. Tejal and Dr. Chitra to explain about their movement. I can call it a movement that language matters. So over to you, Dr. Chitra and Dr. Tejal.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gayatri, for being an absolute sport and going with our,
shenanigans. The word is shenanigans.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for playing the part of the patient and indulging us. And Dr. Tejal and I did the good cop, bad cop thing, not with the intention of scaring doctors that our patients are going to run away finding another doctor. But these are things that do make our patients feel weird. Much of what we have learned, which we used in the conversations as part of the role play today, was something that me and Dr. Tejal learned by doing numerous focus group discussions with individuals with diabetes. So when we invited people to participate in this focus group discussions, we invited our patients with whom we shared a great rapport. You could maybe call them our best patients. We thought they loved us and they were in love with us. But when we put them in a safe space with a psychologist who was asking them to reflect about their experience and what they liked and didn't like, and the thoughts and actions of us as doctors, which put them off, we were quite shocked to learn that there were many, many things, even amongst our best patients, which was still ticking them off. But they still called us the best, which means what they were getting on a daily basis everywhere else is probably something more severe. So that got us to introspect, and this whole endeavor has been to kind of share some of our very important learnings about patient experiences, because all said and done, diabetes is a chronic disease. We all know that if you are coming regularly for follow-up from early on, persistently and consistently, you're going to get better outcomes. So, and I think one of the things which gets our patients to not feel so good about coming back to us is probably some of the bad taste that we leave in their mouth when they go back after one or two of these interactions where we make them feel small, little, and incompetent. So, but my question to you, Dr. Tejal, and I'd like to play the devil's advocate here, and this is India, right? Most of the people who've logged in are from India, and we have extremely busy clinics. We have close to 40 to 50 patients waiting outside every day. You hardly get 4 to 5 minutes per day. I already have so many things to do, and now there is this added pressure of documentation. And on top of that, you're leading this movement called Language Matters, where you want me to now think about what I'm uttering, what I'm saying, how I'm sitting, whether I'm checking my phone or not. Isn't that like expecting too much from me? Isn't that like another thing for me to do? Are you trying to like make sure that I burn out earlier? What is the plan, Dr. Tejal?
So you asked me a lot of questions. So yeah, I'm going to go with the first one. I think that this is not something extra that we need to do. Unfortunately, in India, there's no training for communication. So Dr. Uzma would identify this, and I hope she comments on it at the end of the session, that in the UK, it's part of the training how to communicate. But unfortunately, in India, it's not part of the training. So I think rather than thinking of it as an extra skill to acquire, it should be our default setting, that this is the way we speak with patients. Now, also, let me go a little deeper into the motivations of doctors. So most of the time when you talk to doctors, Chitra, remember when we spoke to a couple of doctors and they told us, no, you know what? I remember that one patient, I scolded them, and next time he came, his HbA1c was normal. Now, the thing is this is what you think that you are supposed to do. This is what you've seen everybody around you do. And you forget about the 9 other patients whom you scolded and probably never came back to you. Because in your 40, 50 patients clinic, how are you going to remember? So we only remember the patient who you scolded and came back, but you forgot the 9 patients who you scolded and didn't come back. And I want to play the devil's advocate here and ask that where does it show that being kind and considerate and empathetic and compassionate to your patient is not a good idea or is not effective? So if we think that scolding and intimidation is the way to go, then, well, it's not true. And that's what all our patients told us, Chitra, across 5 states of India, that no, that's not the way to go. They expect compassionate and empathetic communication. So I think this should be the default setting. I think the other thing that worries doctors is that we place ourselves in the position of God or on a pedestal, and somehow we hold ourselves so responsible for what happens to the patient. So, as we were joking today, I want to paraphrase the Bhagavad Gita, that what is in our hand is the intention, The outcome is not in our hand. So why am I there in that chair? Not to play God and protect my patient forever from harm. I'm not Krishna Bhagwan. But what I can do is provide solutions to my patients, guide them in the right direction, and then hope for the best, leaving the outcome up to them and their destiny. But when we put ourselves on that pedestal and we think that we are the one thing which stands between your patient and death and complications, that's where the problem comes. And even when I'm speaking and when you're talking about the scolding and the intimidation, my blood pressure is going up, my heart rate is going up. So can you imagine all the extra adrenaline that I'm generating, scolding and intimidating people? If I could just relax, take a chill pill and do my best and then just leave it. What do you say?
Right. Yes, I hear you, Dr. Tejal. And I think it's also important. So they do tell us that what you tell yourself as an adult when you fail is something which you heard as a child every time you didn't succeed, right? So similarly, if you can draw an inference and think about the words that you're using with your patients and how harsh they can be, probably it has repercussions, to our mindset, what we tell ourselves, what we the words that we use as we interact with our colleagues, with people in our personal life. Like Ursula Le Guin said, that words are events. They do things, they change things. They transform not just the hearer, but also the speaker. They feed energy back and forth and they amplify it. So it might seem like it is difficult thing to do and too much to ask for us to be kind and considerate. But I think the more kind and considerate you are, you're going to also receive more kindness and consideration from all ends, right? So at the end of the day, maybe practice might not be so stressful, and we can all probably at last reach out and touch that work-life balance, which we are going to address. So some of it probably is linked to the way that we communicate. So over to you, Dr. Tejal, for concluding remarks, and then we'll invite our chairpersons. I'm very interested to know what our chairpersons think.
Yeah, and I just want to say that, it may sound like we were play acting, but I just want to tell the audience that most of the words and phrases we've used here are direct pickup from patient journeys and patient experiences. They're not just scripts that we've made up. We have all the transcripts of our 5 FGDs, and we've actually picked up the phrases there. So you may not have used personally, but I want to confess that most of the phrases in there, I've used them at one time or the other. What about you, Chitra?
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, and then the minute we started doing this work, our practice has transformed. We've changed the way we speak to people completely. And believe me, it's not very hard, and it can be your default setting, as I put it. Thank you so much. Just a big shout out to Gayatri for that wonderful acting. We're so proud of you. And a big shout out to you. Thanks, Chitra. And we pass on the baton back to Dr. Adironke and Dr. Uzma to please give their comments and take the session forward.
Okay, if I may go first. Well, first of all, thank you so much. And that was very brilliant role play. And I think this is confession time. We have all been through the good and the bad, exactly like Dr. Tejal is saying. And I believe that we have learned over the years what works and what doesn't work. But also, I'm impressed that you have taken the time to even carry out the study, even just to document this, to say that this is how our patients feel about the way they're treating them. Yes, and all the examples you presented, the 4 patients, really span the whole spectrum of our patients, from the young and the old, the poor and the rich, and even the pregnant ladies too. And yes, we must be non-judgmental in our approach. And when you do get feedback from the patients, sometimes you really do see that they feel discouraged and disowned, from some of our scaremongering. So I think it's just quite brilliant that we're able to put this forward and have this as a discussion. Just briefly from my experience, I found out, like was mentioned, that yes, our clinics are very busy. In my clinic, we see more than 100 patients per day. And yes, sometimes we can get a bit stressed in terms of, looking at the patient numbers that remain to be seen, and we're looking at our watch. We have to get home and balance our work and life, like we're about to discuss. But communication is key, you know. And what I found out is that if we've got a new patient, there is so much information to give them. So it's best to give it in chunks, you know, because if we bombard them with all the information, they can take in very little, you know, with the stress of a new diagnosis and so on, and they'll really come back and misquote you at the end of the day. So also having the family with the patient, and I'm still talking about new patients, and even for follow-up, having a family member there, next of kin, a spouse, or even an older child, as a support system is just brilliant. That helps to get the message across. And on our part, as we're giving the information, signposting is also important. Websites, you know, patient information leaflets, patient support groups and so on, all come in very handy here. And lastly, safety netting. We've given the patient all this information. We're saying that, okay, you know, we're going to change your information, your manual medication. We're going to start on some insulin or something. But for there to be that open door for them to come back just in case they are having a problem or they're struggling with the new medication or management regimen that we want them to start on. So communication skills is the key. It isn't taught formally, even here in my setting, but somewhere along the line, we realize that we need these skills. And so we kind of go looking for them, you know, by way of short courses and online courses and things like that. So I will stop here and say thank you very much to the panelists. It was a brilliant way to get the message across, and food for thought for all of us. Thank you.